the Giraffe Social Media Podcast. It's what social media managers are talking about. I'm Katie, and today I'm joined by Ellie and Chloe.
Hi.
Hello.
Coming up on this week's episode, we'll be discussing how and why you can make your socials entirely accessible, as well as Facebook's latest groups update. Stick around to the end of the show where we'll be answering some of your burning DMs. So, before we start, today, I think it would be fun to play a couple rounds of Would You Rather, but social media edition. So, first one. Would you rather have really fast internet but it cuts out every half hour, or have really slow connection but it never cuts out?
How long are we talking? How long does it cut out for?
Well, if it's every half hour, let's say like it cuts out for like 10 minutes.
This one's tough. I think personally I would have to go for fast internet that just drops off like 10 minutes every 30 minutes, because nothing makes me rage quite like slow internet connection.
No, makes sense. Ellie, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Chloe. I think the fast internet that just cuts out every now and then. Also there are other ways to get past when it cuts out. Like you can connect your laptop to your 4G and use that. So I've already thought about this in my head and thought this is the way
forward. Are you
forward.
sure this isn't like a real thing that's happened that you're like having to work through?
Oh, honestly, my internet's interesting.
Although,
the woes of working from home, hey?
Yeah. Although I think it cutting out every half hour, is a double thing, because, you get a screen break in between.
Also,
that's so true.
It might mean that you're more productive, because if you're having like 30-minute power sessions of like bashing out work.
True, and you've got like the fear, you've got like a little timer going.
Very true. Nice. Ladies, we found the loophole. Well
Yeah.
done.
I can't believe we found a loophole for my own Would You Rather. Okay, second one. Would you rather only use TikToks or only use Reels?
TikTok. I'm just gonna go straight off. I didn't even need to think about that. I love Instagram Reels, but I'm not on there like on the Reels very much. But TikTok I'm on regularly.
Yeah, I could easily spend an entire day scrolling through TikTok and it would feel like less than an hour. You can't beat that algorithm. It's so good. And like,
Yeah.
I feel like TikTok is an entire app, whereas Reels is just a tiny little section of Instagram. So
Unanimously Team TikTok once again.
Yeah.
We don't have any bias here. Okay, last one. Would you rather only work on your phone or only work on desktop? And I'm going to add in the condition that this includes all community management.
This is a really difficult one, but I think that I'm gonna stick to desktop, because more and more social media platforms are becoming more like desktop available.
Great minds think alike, Ellie, today. We're just on the same wavelength. I would go desktop as well, because while I desperately hate doing any form of community management like on Instagram on your desktop, what I hate even more is like typing up Word documents on your phone. So if we're looking at all of my work, definitely desktop.
It just balances out.
Could you... Oh no, I was going to say, could you also imagine using Canva on your app? I don't know whether you've used Canva on the app.
I do use Canva on my phone app occasionally.
No.
I literally only use it for emergencies.
It does pain me. It is a bit buggy on the app, on the phone. That is also a downside.
See, that in itself puts me off wanting to use my phone for work, so... Yeah.
Cool. Moving on to our main segment of this week's episode, we're going to be talking about accessibility on social media. Now, this is a topic that's really gaining traction, with many social media platforms integrating accessibility features natively so that everyone can access social media. So, girls, what would you say are like easy, surefire ways to include accessibility into your strategy?
I mean, I think the easiest way is through like subtitles and videos. If you're, if you're hard hearing or you're deaf, subtitles are the easiest way to remain inclusive to everyone. And also, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm on the go and I'm watching a video on a social media platform, I will regularly not turn on the volume. So having the subtitles there means that you're continuing getting the social media, engagement, and you have the individual staying on the video for longer because the subtitles are keeping everyone engaged. But that's probably like the easiest way in terms of like video.
Yeah, I think Ellie's so right. I think there's like two important things to remember when it comes to being inclusive and making accessible content, and that is the first, it's not a one size fits all case. Like, it's so important that you consider the most like rare and extreme needs and then kind of create for that, and everyone else will kind of fall into place there. So like Ellie mentioned, I think closed captions on your video is a really great example, because not only are you using captions to help assist people with like hearing impairments, but you're also helping people who are learning the English language, or you're helping people who Ellie mentioned have their sound off. So that is kind of like the baseline when thinking about how to create content that's inclusive. But I think when it comes to actually, putting that content together and posting it, just thinking of sort of the basic design principles is also a really great baseline to start from.
No, I totally agree, Chloe. Like, when it comes to like actually making the content down to the design, it's like easy things that you may not have thought of before. Like, if you're using a graph, you use patterns rather than colours to differentiate different sections. And, making sure you've got like enough contrast between colours if someone's having to use their phone in grayscale, or if they're colourblind, so they're just not missing out on the content you're putting a lot of work into.
Yeah, no, I mean, going off what you were saying there, Katie, I think also being aware of like the text reader software for people who can't see or have visual impairments, so like not overloading on the use of emojis, because that will quite literally be read out to these people. So if you've put I don't know, a whole line of emojis, that will be read out to them, which obviously that's not the sort of content you want to be producing. So just being mindful of that would be really, really helpful. And also when using hashtags, make sure you're capitalizing each word in the hashtag, because again, it helps the text reader software differentiate the separate words instead of merging it all together. And then obviously, it would make no sense if this text reader's going just merging all the text into one. It just makes it a more like
pleasant experience.
Literally.
Definitely. I think a few other kind of texty tips that are maybe lesser known and less obvious are things as simple as writing in plain language, like avoiding jargon, especially for social media managers in the marketing space. Like, there is so much jargon that we use on a daily basis. So yeah, just make sure that you're kind of avoiding slang or technical terms, but in a way that obviously isn't going to compromise your brand's voice. Another one is avoid like calls to actions that are a little bit vague. So saying something like click here is a little bit vague, and obviously if you're unaware of what that link is going to be, you might be a little hesitant to click through. So using descriptive calls to actions like sign up using this link, try it for free here, or subscribe by clicking through this link are going to be really helpful for those kinds of users.
Totally.
I mean, I was also going to say a lot of the social media platforms have, I think it's called the alt text feature, which I've noticed pop up more and more on my social feeds. I don't know whether you guys have seen the same, but Twitter have recently introduced it as well for GIFs. So it will quite literally describe to people what is on the GIF if they can't see or, again, visually impaired. So I think it's just important just to include it as an addition, just to ensure that your content does remain inclusive for all. But also it benefits businesses as well as the individuals, because they'll be more inclined to want to go to your content and probably, I don't know, purchase from your shop or whatever your business is. So it's a win-win for everyone, whilst also remaining really inclusive, which is really important, especially in social media.
Yeah.
I've seen, I mean, using Instagram as a primary example because I'm always on Instagram. I know that they have the advanced option when creating a post to use alt text sort of in the background, the behind the scenes end of the post. But I have seen more and more users kind of include that alt text within their caption, which I think is great as well, because obviously I have no need for that function, but I'm unsure on how you would access that if it weren't in the caption. So I think that's pretty cool, and something that I've kind of looked into using, not only because it helps with inclusiveness, but also it's just good for like SEO and algorithm. But some really great tips I actually found on creating alt text, because I know sometimes people can be a little unsure on, you know, what you really should be doing. So if I may, ladies, run through those quickly. I think the listeners would find that really helpful. So yeah, the first is to convey the content. There's like a big difference between, you know, just simply putting image of a chart compared to something saying like, this bar chart illustrates that there has been a year-over-year increase in forest fires. Something like that, like just a bit descriptive for the users. Skip saying image of or photograph of and just go straight into what the content is. Obviously, if someone's on Instagram, they know that that content is going to be an image. Mention color if it's possible. Katie, I know that you kind of touched on color. And as Ellie mentioned, don't forget to use this on GIFs as well. As we know, Twitter recently made an alt text option for GIFs. So yeah, some super useful tips just there for you guys.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. I think, you know, it can seem a little bit like kind of not jarring, but like on Instagram or whatever, like, you know, you kind of go into the presumption that like you don't need to describe it, but because, you know, it's visual, but for people who like are visually impaired, like it's such an important thing. So, and otherwise it's just an entire social media that they are just like blocked out of.
I think also like simplicity is key, as a lot of the things we said are such like simple actionable things that you can do so easily without really putting in too much effort. I just think for an extra 5 minutes to include, you know, the alt text or less emojis, just being mindful, I think it would really pay off in the long term.
Definitely.
Yeah, simplicity is key.
I think as well, like, if you need an extra prompt, like as we said, being inclusive can be like a big scary task. But on the one hand, you know, a lot of Gen Z and young millennial users kind of expect this type of practice from brands these days. And, you know, it's not enough to kind of say, oh, well, you know, we have a hiring quota where we hire people with disabilities or impairments. Like, you really need to show that on all fronts. And I think social media is just like one of the best ways to do that. But if that hasn't convinced you, maybe I will speak social media manager now. And, you know, using this type of stuff is really great for algorithms and for SEO, like putting, you know, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, if you put captions and closed captions on your videos, you know, you're reaching people who have their sound off, and that's an extra, you know, 50% of your audience that you're reaching just then and there. If you're putting alt text on your Instagram photos, that's helping with the algorithm, because Instagram's AI can read what the image is and then kind of show it to more people in those areas.
I think also focusing on accessibility, it's not just for those with, you know, hearing impairments, you know, visual impairments, etc. I think it's also really important to include inclusive language. So, you know, pronouns, gender pronouns, and just ensuring that, you know, it's all, don't know what I'm trying to say here.
Inclusive, you know, of like everyone, no matter like gender, race, ability. And like I really do love, like, I mean, I kind of mentioned at the beginning that like a lot of platforms are like making steps to become more inclusive by including things like pronouns in your bio now that aren't just like in your bio, they're just like a separate section. And it's just like one of those things that will just normalize like this sort of accessibility and inclusivity. And like you were saying, Chloe, like it is kind of expected now from Gen Z, etc. Like, you just have to look at TikTok for like not that long and you see like all of these kids using like subtitles that they are typing out. And like I use subtitles on my TikToks. Like, I type out each individual word because they just won't show up for audios. So it's just like, you know, it's extra steps that will just like, you know, makes the internet, you know, a bit of a bigger place and people aren't excluded.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Chloe. I think over time, it will just become the norm, and it won't be a thing of like a divide between who, like, brands that do it and others who don't. I think literally maybe give it a few years and everyone will be doing it, and there'll be even more tips and new ways that will make it more accessible for everyone on social media.
Definitely. And I think if you're unsure on, you know, if this podcast wasn't enough, then there are like plenty of ways to stay informed about accessibility tools. I know a lot of platforms run official accounts that are devoted to accessibility. So if you are a social media manager, make sure that you follow those to stay informed. Like, Facebook has, you know, several pages dedicated to accessibility and creating and providing accessibility feedback. Twitter has multiple accounts, YouTube, Pinterest. Like, the information is there, and it's kind of set up specifically for the the platform you're creating your content for. So definitely give those a look at after this episode.
Yeah, cool. So that's a few really solid ways to integrate accessibility into your social media content. I know it may seem a lot and it does seem quite overwhelming, but even making a few steps to make your content accessible will make a huge difference for the groups that rely on it. So, I don't know about you guys, but at the moment it feels as if Facebook is just constantly releasing new information. It's just like, from changing their name, it just feels like a lot. But the latest update to groups has kind of piqued my interest, I'm not gonna lie. So if you haven't seen it, as part of Facebook's 2021 Community Summit, they announced so many new group tools, and I think this could be like a huge upgrade for businesses. Like, what do you guys think?
I mean, I completely agree. I think it's going to really help boost engagement efforts for community pages. Also, it will give, you know, Facebook admins even more like voice and responsibility of running the page, and just give them, you know, a bit more creativity in order to truly engage and attract more audiences to their pages or their group.
So on the groups now, or upcoming, I shouldn't say now, you'll get new custom colour and post background options, as well as emojis decided by the admins. Welcome posts will be more of a thing now, with a tagging limit increased to 500 people. Community rewards are going to be introduced, where members can allocate markers to posts and comments, depending on whether they find it uplifting or inspiring, or they want to highlight it. And then some of the even cooler stuff is things like subgroups that can be exactly. I knew you'd find it interesting. Which can even be a paid element, so just like a second level of your group. And they're going to make it so they can be attached to your pages more easily. So if you've got a business page, you can have a group attached to that a lot nicer.
I just think it's going to make the experience so much, you know, it's going to be a seamless experience for everyone involved. So I really applaud Facebook for introducing these new features, and I look forward to seeing them, you know, in real life, basically, and seeing how it improves these pages and sees if there's an increase in engagement.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I think that like Facebook groups are a really underrated form of community management, and like managing your communities as a brand. And I think that this is really exciting. I mean, we've got the color coordinated posts. You could do this for like different forms of discussion, like different topics of discussion. You got the subgroups, which I think is so epic, especially if it's like a sort of a paid version. You can kind of have like YouTubers have Patreon fans that get early access to like videos and exclusive content. I think you could do this for Facebook, which is so awesome. But also as like someone who is active in some groups on Facebook, I think this is super cool, especially like the awards. I'm not sure if that's something that admins will be giving out, or if it's something that like group members can kind of award other group members for just being awesome. I think that's really cool. As well as the little admin intro at the beginning when you join a group. I think that is such a good example of personalized content, introducing yourself, especially as a brand, kind of if you've got a little support group or like a little FAQ group, like introducing yourself, whether you're the community manager or the business owner as well, like such a nice touch. So this is, the metaverse is popping, guys. I'm into it.
Even though you feel like they're stealing from Marvel with the whole like multiverse.
Yeah, look.
No, I totally agree. Like, I too am like someone who like most of my like Facebook use is within groups, and like the way they are now is like a little bit clunky, and like even just the inclusion of subgroups, I am so hyped about. Because, like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm in quite a few Animal Crossing groups. And it would just be good to have, like, separate things for, like, houses or, like, villages. You know, all of those, like, really fun, exciting things that everyone cares about and not just me.
It like, helps break down, like, segment your audience into what they are looking for, instead of having to like scroll aimlessly through, you know, your page or the group.
That little search bar at the top of the group, and then you have to
it's just
and then, like,
such a
it's never
faff.
like arranged like in the right order.
Posts from 2002 are popping up first.
Yeah, Facebook, sort it out.
Mark Zuckerberg, we're on to you.
Yeah.
I think this is also really cool because, like, I feel like we're a broken record on the podcast sometimes. You know, we see a lot of brands kind of piggybacking off TikTok and introducing Reels and YouTube Shorts and, you know, all this stuff that we simply didn't ask for. But I feel like this has kind of got Reddit vibes.
Yeah.
Which is like, hello, like, what a great idea. Reddit is kind of like an underground sort of platform. I feel like not everyone's on it or knows about it or even like knows how to use it. Sometimes I go in there and it's terrifying. So to have it on a Facebook friendly like platform, like, just warms my heart. Yeah, I'm excited for this.
Oh, cool. I knew you guys would love it. Today's direct message reads, aside from creating accessible content, what ways are best to build a diverse and inclusive social media presence? Chloe, you look like you want to say something now.
Yeah, burning too. I think the most important thing to remember, aside from the tips that we provided earlier, is that representation matters, like super matters, and we did kind of touch on this. But yeah, it's important to kind of think of, it's basic marketing principle that brands should be creating content that speaks to their audience. But, you know, most of the time we're seeing, you know, white, cis, you know, men and women who are, you know, portrayed in the imagery that we see online for brands. So just for a bit of context, in 2019, male characters outnumbered female characters in ads at a rate of 2-1, and people with disabilities only made up 2.2% of characters in ads in 2019. So yeah, role assignment and portrayal is super important as well. So things to think about is, you're a cleaning brand. Is it, you know, is your imagery just women doing the cleaning? Like, that's a big no-no. Is your romance depicted always a heterosexual relationship? So, you know, before you post anything on social media, just make sure you're not promoting, even if it's not overt, any racist, sexist, ageist, homophobic, or any other stereotypes, whether that's kind of internalized and you need to check yourself on it, or, you know, I'm sure most social media managers aren't being overtly racist or sexist. So representation is one really great way to kind of make sure that you are creating an inclusive community online. My second tip, I guess, would be to welcome and embrace feedback. Like if you're, you know, giving it a try for the first time, or you're just starting it out, or maybe you've been doing it for a while, it's important to be open to feedback and kind of own your mistakes. I mean, to give an example, here at Giraffe, like we have a client that works in the sexual health sector, and we put out a post around, I think it was condoms, and we were using specifically like he, him pronouns, and, you know, a user rightly pointed out that it's not just, you know, male assigned people that are using condoms these days. So I think that's a really great example, and we took that feedback on board straight away, and that's something that we will be implementing in the future for that client. So yeah, definitely, as is the case in any form of social media, make sure that you are welcoming and embracing feedback.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think a lot of people as well are kind of scared of doing it wrong or saying the wrong thing, when actually I think it's a case of like, if you're trying to be more inclusive with your language and your imagery, people can tell that you're trying, and as long as you're taking feedback on board, like, people will be more happy with that than you just completely ignoring it and then just like not even attempting to do anything. So
Definitely,
you know, it's
like start
the little
small.
steps. Exactly, like little steps are just like take you a really long way.
And I think, you know, as long as you are being authentic about it, like you're actually doing it because you care about your audience and you care about being inclusive.
Exactly. And like you might as well start now, because like these things aren't going away. Like if you start now, then you're just going to be ahead of the game anyway. Cool. So that was our top DM of this week. Hopefully we answered all your burning questions. If you'd like to be featured in next week's episode, then make sure you slide into our DMs on Instagram at GiraffeSM. Well, that's all we've got time for today. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or follow us if you're listening on Spotify. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's episode, so make sure you reach out on social media and let us know what you thought. We've been Giraffe Social Media, you've been amazing, and we'll see you next time.